Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Scott Singer, and he's going to teach us, or we're going to navigate through the black hole, as you call it, because according to the US Bureau of Labor, since April, there has been a shift in the job industry, in the labor force. There was in April 9.3 million job openings, and it has been declining, but not as much. As of now, there is in the US an approximate 6.1 million job openings. So now they're talking about a ratio of 1 to 1. One person looking for a job, and there is one opening for that person looking for a job. So this is what we're going through right now. I think that we all had this disruptive time of what happened in 2020. And now we're trying to reopen, but in a different way, because we all thought it was going to be open. Everybody was going to get back to their jobs. And that has not been the case. So, welcome. Scott, can you please tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, before I ask you the first tough question?
Absolutely, Gladys, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Scott Singer. I am a resume writer and career coach. I work with clients at all levels and across a variety of industries in terms of preparing them for and helping them navigate the job search. And my background is, before I did this, I was a corporate recruiter for almost 20 years, working with some pretty major companies such as Bacardi, Louis Vuitton, Motorola, and Ryder. So that's myself, and it's a pleasure.
You know the whole inside and out of the corporate world. So a lot of people have asked me and said, okay, people don't want to go back to work because they have the government benefits that are actually expiring soon. And this has a lot to do with the hospitality industry, like restaurants, leisure, events. But I don't think that's the case. According to my thoughts, is that the part of the women that cannot go back to the workforce is because they don't have any child care. So that's part of the whole picture. The other part is that a lot of the people now want benefits. They want a better pay, or they simply want a new job. This is my point of view. So I would love for you to share what's your vision of this.
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of truth in all of that. And, I think there is the argument that some people may have been in a better financial position, with the enhanced benefits, and it may have served as a deterrent for some individuals. But I think by and large, I think we've got to think about this in the larger context, which is that, a career is a pretty big undertaking. Getting a job, getting out there and taking an opportunity is a large undertaking. And, what comes along with that is exactly what you're talking about. I mean, we go out, we work because we have to, we collect a paycheck, and we use that to pay our bills. And, for parents, not just women, but men as well, may have daycare situations they need to worry about. They've been working remotely for all this time, and they've been able to make ends meet doing that. Haven't had to commute. So I think there's an element of a lot of people who are taking a look at what their situation was before the pandemic, and they're saying, I'm not sure I want to give up everything about my life to go back to the way that it was. So, I think that what we're seeing is a fundamental shift in terms of people's expectations. People are expecting a compensation package or benefits that's more in line with the work that they're doing. They're expecting more of a living wage. I'm not an economist, but I will tell you that, over the past several years, up until about 2 years ago, the real wages weren't really increasing. Things were staying pretty stable. So what's happened is that I think a lot of people are going into this with much higher expectations. And I think the other part of this, there's multiple aspects, but I think another part is, I think there's a contingency of people that want to continue to work remote. Now, whether the market's going to let them do that, I think is another conversation. But, they've seen how rewarding that can be. And then the other part of this is, I think that people have simply had time to reflect, time to sit down and to look at what they were doing, and they're not sure that that's the area that they want to go back into. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of disruptive forces at work right now.
Part of the whole year was that people really reflected on, is this what I want to go back to? But the other part was, and I'm going to tell a story that I just found out this week. I'm not naming names because I don't have the permission to disclose the name, but there's a boutique hotel that decided to offer a little less per hour. Instead of $16, they offered $14, but they offered full benefits in order to get the staff that they needed to open the hotel. And they actually got all the employees that they needed. So I think that's also a trend, that with COVID, a lot of the people realize the importance of having insurance coverage. So that's also extremely important.
It's not just insurance, though. I mean, insurance is a part of the equation. I think you need to look at it from the concept in business is total rewards. Like, what am I getting? Is it just a straight $15 an hour paycheck? Or is the company showing me that they value me by giving the benefits, the health insurance, bonuses, daycare cost deferrals, training and tuition reimbursement? Look, I mean, I think for a very long time, especially since 2008, when we had the housing crash and the economy went bad, a lot of companies had approached, even over the years since then, that it was a buyer's market in terms of labor. They didn't budge. They didn't have to. There were enough people out there looking for jobs that they didn't change the way that they approached it. They kept bringing people on, and they didn't have to sweeten the pot. And, over the last few years, this was a trend that was happening right before COVID, where employers had to get a little more aggressive in terms of compensation. But I think now people are looking at the total comp. What am I getting out of this in terms of being able to do this? And then, of course, but again, the other intangible is, and I'm hearing this a lot from my clients, is people that want to work remote. You can't do that if you're in housekeeping at a hotel, for example. But if you are working in a knowledge worker job, where you're doing finance or accounting or marketing or sales or some other function, there may be the possibility that you could actually physically do the job remotely on a continued basis. Now, whether the companies want to allow that or not, I think is something that still remains to be seen. But that seems to be something that now that people have gotten taste of that benefit of working from home, working remotely, that they want to continue doing that. I've seen a lot of people that are looking for jobs based on that.
Just based on that. And there are a lot of people that are actually can't wait to go back into the office. So fortunately, there's
some of those. I've seen a few of those, but I think more of people that want to continue to work the way they've been working over the past year.
There is a lot of competitive. It's very competitive. Not a lot of the jobs, but what are you seeing on higher skilled jobs? Are they offering? Are there job openings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
More skilled labor force?
Yeah, I've been speaking to a lot of my friends that are recruiters from an agency standpoint and a corporate standpoint. And what we're seeing is that there's more jobs being posted than there are candidates to fill them. So, especially jobs like, as you're talking about, highly skilled, finance, accounting, information technology, marketing, positions that are more knowledge-based. and highly skilled, there is a definite need in that market, and it's driving salaries up.
Now let me ask you something. When it was like before, like I know I'm older than you, and we used to look for a job. There was a post, you apply for the job, and you got an interview. So you got the chance to sell yourself. Now you send a resume, you upload it, so you don't even talk to anyone. You just upload a resume to the Sky, and that's it. And there's a lot of algorithms that don't even take your resume. You don't even know where that resume goes. You cannot even follow up. So yeah. What can somebody that's really looking for a job to change careers, that are now trying to open their journey, what can they do?
Well, so first of all, I'm old enough to remember the days when you would go to the store and you'd buy linen paper and linen envelopes, and you would print the linen up and send them off. What's changed is it's a volume thing. Now, try to put yourself in the shoes of the company, right? When candidates used to go and apply to a job, if it required the effort of going to the store, getting the paper, getting the stamps, getting the envelopes, printing up a piece of paper, it was a much more deliberate process, and it weeded out a lot of people in terms of the process. Also, in most cases, people had to buy a newspaper. They'd see the advertisements in the paper. So it was a self-eliminating process in a lot of ways. Now what's happened is that with the internet, jobs get more exposure. They get across different websites. People in different geographic areas can see the positions. In any event, what's happening is that more people have access to these jobs. And so what it's done is it's driven up the volume of numbers. So over the years, what's happened is that companies have put in place what's called an applicant tracking system. That's the computer system that they use to sort through the initial resumes. And they need it. I have a friend who worked for Amazon, and she told me that even the jobs that they didn't get, that they didn't advertise very much, they'd still get as many as 10,000 people that would apply to a job online. So if you think about it from the standpoint of the corporate recruiter who's working on 30, 40 open jobs, they're overworked as much as the rest of us, and they're going through 10,000 applicants on each job. So that's 300,000 or 400,000 resumes. They're never going to be able to look through all of those resumes. They just can't. There's no time. So what happens is they use algorithms and they use keywords to go through, do the initial sort, and they'll give resumes a score, and they'll stop with the top rated resumes, work their way down until they've got a stack of 5 or 10 resumes that they really like. They're going to share those with the hiring manager, and that's going to be it. So it's not unusual for the recruiter to go through maybe 500, 1,000 resumes before they stop looking through all of them. So it is simply a numbers game, and companies do this out of necessity. They need to be able to be more efficient. Unfortunately, it leads to a lot of hard feelings. People that don't get the attention they need, or they deserve, don't get the phone calls, and it's become a very impersonal process. So, I think that, to put it bluntly, the approach that I tell people is to take kind of a 3-step approach. Step 1 is follow their process. You see the job description, you look at the job description, you look at some of the keywords, some of the skills, make sure those are indicated in your resume. You go ahead and upload the resume. Step 2 is you use LinkedIn to see if you can find somebody who may be the decision maker in a company. So if you're a financial analyst, look for the finance manager at that company. And the 3rd step is send them a LinkedIn note, an email saying, "Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I have applied online for this position. You're demonstrating that you followed their process. I'd love to talk to you. I have the experience you're looking for. My resume is attached, sincerely." And what you're doing is you are essentially, working around the system, but you're showing that extra initiative. You're showing that you can do good research, that you have good follow-up skills. And by reaching the decision maker, you may be reaching them before HR even has a chance, human resources has a chance to even go through all the resumes. So, you know, as long as you're following their process and then doing a little bit extra and networking on your own, you know, that's really the recipe to success. Networking directly is, there's no substitute for it.
But for example, there are, when you put it on a resume, how can you enhance some of the assets that you really have?
Yeah.
Like a tip on what to put on a resume that catches that little thing that is going to make me different from the other 10,000 people.
Well, so here's the trick, Gladys. You've got two audiences, right? You've got the people that are going to read the resume, and you've got computer systems that are going to read the resume. And you need to try to be successful with both and try to balance that. So, you know, to try to increase your chances, you know, every resume should have a keyword section, a skills section, where if you see something on the job description that maybe you have, that you would include that. So for example, if they're looking for Salesforce CRM and you've used Salesforce, but you don't have it on your resume, make sure you include it. You know, look at the job description closely, see what the requirements are, and then make sure you tweak and tailor the resume just for a couple minutes, by the way. You're never going to be able to guess the, you know, the algorithms 100%, but, you know, by spending a couple of minutes, by being strategic, looking at the job and upgrading your resume a little bit, it does increase your opportunity of getting through those filters.
Okay, so we're talking at a scenario that was last year. What happens now when there is a lot of job offerings?
So this is you know, right now with a lot of job opportunities, I think right now it's a race. And I think that if you can get in front of the hiring manager first, I think that's going to be beneficial. So, you know, again, you know, try to, the mindset that I work with my clients on is I try to portray it this way. You are the solution to the hiring manager's problem, right? You've got the skills and experience they need. And if you can get your resume in front of them that demonstrates that you've got the right skills and that you read the job description and that you've got the right experience and that you have an achievements-driven resume, then by working through that, I mean, the manager may see 10, 15 resumes at most. If you can be one of those, your chances are far better than being 1 in 10,000.
I've heard, for example, in the last year, that there's a lot of people lying on the resume, putting careers that don't exist, jobs that were never true, and they get away with it.
I can tell you that my experience has been far less than that. I don't, you know, I think that I think that the one thing, I mean, I've had experiences with that. I'm not, you know, make no mistake, there always is the person that's going to lie. And I tell everybody, do not lie. Okay. You know, whether it's about your experience or your achievements or what you've done in the job. But, you know, I think that the fault that most people have is not lying, but underselling themselves. That seems to be the bigger problem, where they're not putting down what they've achieved. They're not quantifying their accomplishments. They're not making it clear the value they've added to their company. Because having solid achievements on your resume, you know, quantifiable or quantitative or qualitative, will help a potential employer visualize the value that you can add to that company. So, you know, again, I think the dishonesty is less of a problem than just underselling.
Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, we passed the resume stage, we got through the black hole, and we got an interview. So what are your recommendations? We're sitting right there. It's a really competitive industry. What's your recommendation now that we're in front of the person?
Absolutely. So, you know, even before you get in front of the person, make sure that you've got a perfect wardrobe for this. If you haven't bought a suit in 10 years, go to Macy's, go to Bloomingdale's, go to Men's Warehouse, whatever. Buy a suit, get something current. Make sure that you're presentable in a modern and effective way. You know, one of the topics that, you know, to keep in mind is age discrimination is very real. People, you know, sometimes employers think that folks that are a little bit older can't keep up. They're not too modern. Having a modern and current presentation will help diffuse a lot of that. But once you get into the interview itself, I think there's a few things that you can do to really help win people over. Number one is be prepared. And what I mean by that is know what's on your resume, know what you've done, be prepared for what's called behavioral interview questions. These are questions that an employer is going to ask you about how you did something in the past, with the idea that it's going to be a reflection on how you would handle situations in the future. And they're tough questions. You need to really know your background and how to tell those stories. But I think other things are, number one, smile. A lot of people forget to be their most personable self, be their friendly self. If you're going into an office, you're spending more time with these folks than your family. So, it's important to be someone who's, maybe if not liked, at least likable, somebody who's personable and, people will feel that they can get along with. I think the other thing that I would encourage people to do is at the end of the conversation, always have questions ready. One of the worst things that a candidate can do is go into the interview. They do a great job answering all of the manager's questions. The manager asks, do you have any questions for us? And then nothing, just silence. And the reason you want to have questions is it shows that you've been paying attention, and it shows that you're interested and you're looking forward to the situation. So talking about even basic questions like, can you tell me a little bit about why this opportunity is available? Can you tell me a little bit about what the perfect candidate for this job looks like? Which is a great question, because you can kind of check to see if your perceptions that you're giving off are the same as what they are seeing in you, and gives you a chance to address other things. The last thing I would say is don't bring up salary unless somebody else brings it up first. Wait for that conversation to come up before you even address that.
You touched on a very important question, a very important point, age.
Mm-hmm.
So now everybody has to go back. I know there's a lot of people that had to tap into their savings that are really going through a tough time. And they're at an age that they really need to go back to work. So what happens then? Like the algorithm will automatically strike your year and then done? How can you overcome that?
Yeah, I actually do presentations on how to avoid age discrimination in interviewing. And basically, a couple of points are, first of all, with regard to the resume, is don't go any further back on your work history than you need to. So typically the guideline is that you go back 7 years or 3 jobs. So, obviously there's exceptions to that, but, if you can whittle down your experience to the most recent work, that can be beneficial because it doesn't put things so far back. Secondly, take off your dates from your education. It doesn't matter when you graduated from high school or college. What's important is that you have the experience and the achievements that they need. So those are things that you can do to kind of help keep up with that. Also, this is something a lot of people don't think about. Make sure your resume is in a modern format. Things have changed over the years. Resumes used to be more of a 2-column affair where you'd have dates on the left, job descriptions on the right. It was a Times New Roman font. It's not like that anymore. So having something that's a little more modern, an appearance in your local Barnes & Noble will have a ton of guides on effective resumes, and you can see the fonts and the styles that they're using. And then the last thing,
Can you be very creative, like a different kind of something to get the attention, or will that be also dropped down by the algorithms?
It depends. So here's the thing about resumes, Gladys, is resumes are one of these things that there's no hard and fast rules, but there's a lot of suggestions and guidelines. And the reason being that there's just so many different readers. If you ask 10 different people about your resume, you're going to get 10 different opinions, right? You'll get 10 completely different opinions. People look for different things. And the other thing is that, yes, every system works a little bit differently too. Different keywords, different filters, different mechanisms. But there are a few rules that I think are important. Number one is stay away from putting graphics on a resume that you're going to send to a company. And what I mean by that is, you know, you can make a resume look really cute and really attractive and energetic if it's got like little charts and it's got illustrations. And, you know, for folks that are graphic designers, for example, that may be a fantastic thing to include. The problem is that if you've got graphics or you've got text boxes, the applicant tracking system will just skip over those, and it may not pull all the information on the resume into your file. Therefore, you may miss essential keywords if you've put it in a graphic or in a text box. So, you know, it's important to have everything just in inline text. You know, from a style standpoint, I tend to stay a little bit more on the conservative side. You know, I make sure that everything, you know, it looks current, but not overly artistic, you know, from a resume standpoint. But those are kind of the things you want to do to make sure that you don't fall out of the queue.
What happens with those apps that there are now online that you pay to have a resume done? Will that work or?
Well, I mean, you know, that's a service that I offer, for example. So people will come to me. I mean, there's no shortage of resume writers that, you know, but there's services that vary between, you know, very basic, like folks that'll charge a minimal price and have, you know, a quick resume put together. And then you've got folks that focus all the way up to executive level resumes, and they charge pretty substantial fees for those. What I will say is that, you know, there is merit sometimes to hiring a resume writer. And the reason being that, you know, you want to make sure that you're following the best practices. These are people that work on those day by day. You know, they do it every day. They're building resumes. They're working with a variety of clients. They know how to highlight achievements and accomplishments and skills. My recommendation is, if you're going to look for a resume writer, find someone who has a certification. So, you know, one of the certifications that I hold is the Certified Professional Resume Writer, CPRW. And, you know, I think you'll find that anybody that's passed that test, you know, because it is a pretty rigorous exam that you've got to go through to get that certification. If you're working with somebody who has a certification, you'll know that they've at least gone through the discipline of having a resume project where they've had it evaluated and it's up to the standards. You know, there's also other organizations, the National Resume Writers Association. They have a directory of members, the Professional Association of Resume Writers. You know, just like any industry, there's good and there's bad. You know, my advice is that, you know, find somebody that, you know, you like, talk to them, send them a note, understand, ask for some of their samples, and, you know, understand what's part of the process. But yes, they can definitely add value to that.
No, definitely. I know that every person that concentrates on your professional help, it's an added value, totally. But now let me ask you from the other point of view, because before COVID, I always hire my interns because I know how they do. I train them. And whoever shows that little spark or passion gets hired. On one occasion, we were looking for somebody very specialized. We got like 20 resumes. I left it to my daughter to choose and narrow it down. And we interviewed actually 10 people. After 10 people, we chose the perfect candidate. We hired her. 2 weeks later, we found out that it was a complete disaster. Nothing that was actually said to us during the interview or the experience was done correctly.
Okay.
So I can go into an interview and say everything you want to hear. How can you overcome from an employer's point of view? How can you cut through the BS?
Well, let me be very clear. There's going to be some excellent BS artists out there, and they're always going to be there. But my recommendation is do your homework, do your due diligence. do a background check on the individual, and do references. Ask them for references of people that can validate what they've done. When you get into the references, make sure that they can speak specifically about some of the work they've done. Ask the how. Tell me about how this person did what they did. Can you tell me about the results? Also, the other thing is behavioral interview questions. Ask them questions that are challenging. Tell me about a time that you and your coworker did not get along. Tell me about a time that you had an impossible deadline. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Ask them to talk you through that situation. And don't just settle for a short yes, no answer. Dive in. If you see something that doesn't make sense, pick at that answer. Get further into the questions and really understand how the person thinks.
But that time is over. This flies when you're having fun, but I really appreciate this. Was a lot of amazing information, not only for the opportunities that they're out there, but for both sides of the spectrum. People looking for jobs and people looking for employees, because I tell you, this week I called 2 or 3 hotels and they haven't been able to open because they don't have the staff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's a catch.
Welcome to new times. No question about it.
Correct. So thank you so much. Everyone have a great day, and above all, stay safe. See you next week.
Thank you, Gladys.
Bye.